Yankees Files podcast. We are back. I'm Will Harris, you're Alec Whipple, and the rest of you are fans of the team with the most wins in baseball and the best run differential in baseball. That team is, of course, the AL East leading New York Yankees. Whipple, a lot to get into on this episode. The Yankees are coming off a terrific week. There's been a lot of discourse, particularly about a certain presumptive MVP. So we have plenty to get into. But first, how are you doing? You just got back from vacation.
I did. I was in South Carolina. I enjoyed the nice weather. I was battling a bit of a head cold, so it's like kind of tough to be in warm weather when you're congested, but I enjoyed it all the same.
Thank you for your service. Great
place. I know. No, I was told by a lot of women in my life that men complain too much about being sick. So I had to say it, but I promise I won't keep talking about it because apparently I talked about it too much. But, in the time that I came down with my ailment, the Yankees had a pretty good week. And ever since I sent my tweet of anger, it was not a tweet of anger and sickness. It was just a tweet of anger. The Yankees are 7-1, right? So, I mean, I have to say, did I turn the season around? Was that the tweet that turned the season around? I know by the look in your eyes, you're going to say no, but you have to wonder.
Well, the Yankees also only have one loss since I returned to the United States.
That's true. Wait, you got back Saturday?
Got back Sunday.
Okay, that's it. But I was 7-1. You're only 6-1.
Only
the tweet Friday. So
only
really, I don't.
But
know.
I never gave up on them.
I think Jazz Chisholm really is the player who turned the season around because since they traded for him, they have that 7-1 record. And
how do we know it's not Enyel De Los Santos?
Why didn't Aaron Judge talk about Enyel?
A real captain like DJ LeMahieu would have talked about Enyel De Los Santos.
A real captain like DJ LeMahieu hits a ground ball up the middle to be the game-winning hero on Sunday against a 5-man infield. No
okay,
less.
So let's.
And I know we're getting ahead of ourselves, but it's that kind of week. It's a good.
Let's start there. What a ridiculous game the Yankees played on Sunday to go down early, come back to tie it, get delayed by rain for a long time, like long enough that late in the delay, I went to get a burrito, got it, brought it home, ate it, and then the game still hadn't restarted. And this burrito was not nearby. And in fact, the burrito place was out of the burrito that I wanted. So I had to get a different one, which wasn't as good. I later had a discussion with a friend that this burrito establishment was possibly a one-tool player, but that one tool is elite. So I've started calling it the Kyle Schwarber of burrito establishments. Anyway, really long delay. And then the Yankees did something that they don't normally do, that teams don't normally do, which is hold their opponent scoreless under the new extra innings format. And what a credit to, primarily Mark Leiter Jr., who was able to get the whiffs that he needed to hold the Jays scoreless in the top of the 10th, which allowed the Yankees to employ the only strategy that makes any sense, or the only time this strategy makes any sense at the bottom of the 10th, which was to sacrifice the runner on second to third and then hope that the next guy gets him in. But yeah, Mark Leiter Jr., line out to center that does not advance the runner, strikeout swinging, hit by pitch, great challenge, by the way, on the hit by pitch, and then strikeout swinging, basically the formula for a perfect extra innings, half inning under these new rules. So that was awesome. And then when DJ LeMahieu came up and they brought in a fifth guy in the infield, I was very pessimistic. I texted you. I said he's going to mess this up somehow after one of the pitches that he fouled off. And then, of course, he still hits the ball on the ground, but it gets through. Sometimes stuff's just going your way, man.
I mean, isn't it that's baseball season moment that he had the walk-off last year against the Jays in a 5-man infield? Like, I never remembered that part about the 5-man infield, but I guess that's the situation where he does well.
Also, credit where credit's due. He hit that ball 101 miles an hour.
He did. And credit to Trent Grisham, as I remember
Yep.
from going to the game against the Dodgers where Trent Grisham did not get down the bunt in the 10th inning to advance the runner. It's not like a guarantee that you're going to
No.
get the runner over. And I know Volpe probably would have scored, but it makes it a lot easier that he was on third. So yeah, everything. I would say that was kind of the theme of the week and really of this 7-1 stretch. Like the little moments went as they were supposed to. And in a lot of close games against Boston, Philadelphia, now Toronto, I think every player executed like the little things. And that sometimes is just as important as, not more important than the big home runs, but important in their own way. I'm just going to clarify that.
Yeah. I mean, even when guys have found themselves in bad situations, they've executed. For example, in the second game against Toronto, Mark Leiter loads the bases. What is looking like a comfortable win is suddenly in question, and the Yankees need Clay Holmes to come in to get one out and strikes a guy out. Similar thing happens in the last game against Toronto. Clay Holmes has to come in the 8th inning after Tommy Kahnle gets himself into trouble with some walks plus an error, and Holmes gets the fly out from Kirk, which unfortunately ties the game, and then strikes out the next guy. So I think, I'm not saying this to further my Clay Holmes narratives, although it would, but it's just a further example of, in basically every game except the one in which Marcus Stroman gives up 7 runs in fewer than 3 innings, whatever they needed from a given guy in a given situation, it really felt like they got. And that was true in the Philadelphia series. Mm-hmm. It was true in the Toronto series. It was true at the end of the Red Sox series with like the, Trent tying the game with 2 strikes and 2 outs in the 9th, and then Glaber giving them the insurance runs and extra innings. Like, it's just been that kind of run. And honestly, I feel like they were due for it, because a team this good, as I said, they have the best run differential in baseball, the most wins in baseball. A team this good doesn't play as badly as it did for as long as it did without the regression monster being its friend for a little while. And maybe that's some of what we've seen. They've won some close games, and there's not always, that can sometimes be more skill than luck, more luck than skill. But this week was just an example of like, look, sometimes stuff goes wrong for you for a long time, and sometimes stuff goes right for you for a long time. And that's not to say there weren't games this week in which they just completely outplayed their opponents, which there obviously were. They beat up the Phillies pretty badly. Zach Wheeler, exactly. So I just want to point out that the Yankees, for a little while, probably played a little bit better than they are. For a little while, played a lot worse than they are. And they're still in the process of finding their level. The season is 162 games long for a reason. And we have teams that are tied, and we used to have plentiful 1-game playoffs for a reason. It takes a long time to figure out who a baseball team is. And I think the Yankees, we're seeing them become the team that they are, but the season's long for a reason. It takes a while.
Yeah, and that's like the good thing and the bad thing. I mean, I think it's fair to say the Yankees, like you said, were playing pretty poorly for a while, and
they were.
It's okay to be frustrated at that. Like, I definitely, obviously was frustrated at that. But what I think the biggest thing to look at is there are a lot of good teams in the league this year, but like even the good teams have played pretty poorly at times. And really no team has separated itself, and the standings reflect that. I mean, if we're doing Phillies files right now, or if we were doing it on Thursday, like, what's the story of the week for the Phillies? Your ace got pounded in game 1, then you came back against the Yankees in game 2, but you couldn't put them away. And then
to be clear, in game 2, Nola got hit ridiculously hard. Like, the Yankees did not get nearly as good results in that game as you would think. Like, Nola got very, very lucky. I would argue the Phillies were lucky not to give up, 10 runs in 9 innings again.
I mean, what, game 3, then you give up six RBIs to DJ LeMahieu. So, like,
It's like, how bad can things get?
Right. Like every team, I mean, look at the Orioles for the last like 6 weeks, just like the Yankees. Like every team in baseball has, I mean, the Guardians have the best record right now. And I don't think anyone really thinks the Guardians are the best team in baseball. So
I don't.
the standings are very indicative of that. I mean, a lot of teams have good records and are close, but no team has separated itself. And even the teams we thought were going to really haven't. And I think the Yankees obviously knew that at the trade deadline, but the Yankees also knew that in that, like, or they know that in that, like, even though they've sucked, they're at the top of the league and the standings are, they're tied for first. They're pretty in pretty good position. But, I think people want like this objective measure of success to be a 10-game lead in the division. And like, that's not, I mean, a good team can still be a good team and be in a, in a close division race. Like I asked on Twitter something about the Yankees, in 2009, how would people have responded with the team that had a 1.5 game lead that lost 5 of 8 games going into the deadline and then only acquired
people did not players. Like that.
And then people were like, well, no, they were hot for 2 months. I'm like, they weren't. They were good. And then they had a downstretch going to the deadline. It really wasn't until August that they found their groove not with players that were picked up at the deadline. So like even the best teams, it really is like, part of it you can control, part of it's just the league around you. But by no means should you think the Yankees are out of it this season because of their poor play. If the Yankees were in this position and were like 6 back in the division and maybe like tied for the second wild card, then yeah, I think there's, you have to start thinking about how do you make up those games? How do you separate yourself? But the Yankees are tied for first. And if they, fall out of that position, they have a very comfortable lead in that first wild card spot. So for everything that's happened, every team's going through it to some level. I mean, the Dodgers are, the Orioles are, the Phillies are. So I think we should be really happy with the fact that it seems like the ship is righted and the standings are good. And the Yankees got some good players at the deadline. Maybe it wasn't as much as we wanted, but Jazz Chisholm, Mark Leiter Jr., and Yul De Santos are going to help this team. And that makes me excited.
And I mean, we've already seen them help the team.
Yeah.
I know the Yankees
have we seen
internally. Sorry?
Have we seen Enyel help yet?
Of course we have.
Did he pitch I forget. He pitched yesterday, right?
I'm pulling it up because I'm getting the games mixed up. Enyel pitched yesterday.
Okay.
2/3 of an inning, a hit and a strikeout. He also pitched in the first game of the series, 1 2/3, 7 batters faced, a hit and a strikeout. He, as a Yankee, has a 0 ERA and 2.74 FIP.
There you go. I was caught up in the tweet about him. I just forgot if he had pitched or not.
Yeah, no, and I happen to know that the Yankees internally are quite high on De Los Santos. He's gotten hit hard at times this year, but they also think that some of the quality of contact metrics aren't telling the whole story with him, that he's gotten a lot of weak contact that hasn't been turned into outs. In fact, I was told, I think his ERA should be a full run lower than it is. So if the Yankees are right in their evaluation of De Los Santos and how they deploy him, he should be a particularly effective guy moving forward, which would be a lot of fun.
Great.
There's a certain hitter on the Yankees who's really good, and his name is Aaron Judge. He is the best hitter in baseball currently by basically no matter how you look at it. He is currently sporting a cool 216 WRC plus, which is 26 points clear of the nearest hitter to him, Juan Soto, and 36 points clear of the nearest non-Yankee to him, Shohei Ohtani, among qualified hitters. He has hit 41 home runs. He's driven in 103 runs. He's scored 87 runs. He walks 18.5% of the time. He has a 456 on base and a slugging over 700. His WRC plus, I think, is over 200, even if you go back to the beginning of 2022, which is an insane period over which to carry such stats. Yeah, it's 201 over that period. But there's been some discourse that's popped up about Aaron Judge because people have called him the best hitter of their lifetimes. And these are people whose lifetimes include the careers of Bonds and Pujols and others. I'll hear an argument for Bonds. I'll hear an argument for Trout. I'll hear an argument for Pujols. I won't hear an argument for Ken Griffey Jr., Ichiro Suzuki, or Tony Gwynn. And there's been a lot of Tony Gwynn is a better hitter than Aaron Judge discourse out there. And I'd like to know your response to it, because I certainly have some thoughts.
I mean, I think it all comes down to people think hitter is like related to how many hits the player gets, and has nothing to do with what type of hits those are. And there's one number that people will look at to determine who they think the best hitter is. And if you want to go by that metric, then you're looking at 1/100th of the context. And so it's not even like a conversation worth having. I mean, it's very clear that like there's a certain type of player who hits for batting average, and that's good for them, but they're just never going to be as valuable as all of the other players, and especially the ones that you reference who are in that upper echelon, who can, again, hit for batting average as well. Let's be clear about that. I mean, Judge, Trout, Pujols all hit for very, very good batting averages, and then do the 99% of the other things that makes them special. So
also, Aaron Judge has a 298 batting average in his last 2,300 plate appearances. So like people are acting like Aaron Judge is Kyle Schwarber in this discussion, which like his career batting average is something like it's 286. Ichiro's was like 311. And we're talking about Ichiro like he was the king of getting hits. Like, pump the brakes, guys.
I mean, Aaron Judge has clearly gone up another level since 2022.
Yeah.
And but let's not forget, he was a really good player before that too. And in that aggregate career, with a career batting average of 286, that, okay, isn't at Gwynn's, 338 or whatever. Or just like, that's, again, one part of a very large story.
But also,
hitter does not mean, that's not the only metric of hitter. And that's stupid to think otherwise.
Exactly. And so someone said to me, well, in a situation in which you need a hit, I would want Ichiro or Gwynn up over Judge. But my response to that is, sure, Judge is the least likely of those guys to get a hit, but he's also the least likely to get out. And getting out isn't good. And he's also the most likely to hit a home run or get an extra base hit. And both of those things are really good. So unless you believe that out avoidance is not important, and you believe that all hits are the same amount good, like that's what you have to believe to think that Aaron Judge is a worse hitter than Tony Gwynn or Ichiro Suzuki or whomever. Hal to Hell had a phenomenal tweet pointing out that the gap in OPS between Aaron Judge and Tony Gwynn is larger than the gap in OPS between Tony Gwynn and Santiago Espinal, which made the right people angry and is therefore a good tweet. The discourse is insane. It's just Steve Rector at SRector7 had a great tweet about how like a lot of people claim that they understand why batting average isn't all that informative a metric until Tony Gwynn's name gets brought up. And I brought up to the Crosstown Sports group chat that I think Tony Gwynn actually kind of screwed his own legacy by hitting for such a high average, because it makes people forget how good he was at the rest of baseball. From 1986 to 1987, he won Gold Gloves in both seasons. He averaged 34 doubles and 46 stolen bases while walking 11% of the time and striking out 6% of the time. But he just gets compared to Luis Arraez, who is one of the worst defenders in baseball, only has 15 career stolen bases, and has walked under 5% of the time in the last 2 years, because Arraez is the modern guy who hits for a high average and makes a bunch of contacts. If you want to be fair to Tony Gwynn, at least compare him to Stephen Kwan. Like be real here. So shout out Tony Gwynn, who has been disrespected in many conversations, but is being used for the absolute wrong purposes in this one. And it's causing people like, this is the thing that happens where people compare. They're like, oh, I would much rather have Kyle Schwarber I would much rather have Luis Arraez than Kyle Schwarber. And then people point out how like Luis Arraez is actually not that impressive a hitter in many ways, even though he hits for a high average. And it's like, oh, why are you denigrating batting average? Why are you tearing down Luis Arraez as a player? It's like, that's not what I'm doing. But if you're going to put him in this tier that he doesn't belong in, I'm going to explain to you why he's not in that tier. And the fact that this discourse invites people to be like, here's why Tony Gwynn was actually much worse than you think he was, is really unfortunate. Like, we should put ourselves in situations to appreciate the great players of the past. We should also understand them in the context of how good they actually were. And acting like Tony Gwynn was one of the best hitters of all time when that's really not what he was. He was phenomenal at certain things. It's just like I don't want my discourse about Tony Gwynn all to be about how he's worse than someone is acting like he is, but that's what people ask of me when they talk about him in relation to Aaron Judge in this way. It's like, come on, guys.
I mean, I think the other thing I'd say, the big other thing is, like, for Judge, it's all about the era too. And I'm not just talking home runs. I mean, it's never been harder to get a hit, and it's never been harder to be a good hitter. And for when Tony Gwynn and Ken Griffey Jr. played, it was easier to be a hitter, and that's reflected in their weighted runs created plus and advanced stats that normalize for era and year. And I think that Aaron Judge is respected as a good hitter, but it's hard to fully appreciate that context until you look at what he's doing in comparison to the rest of the league and his OPS plus and WRC plus. Like, OPSs can be compared across era, but you have to look at those stats that neutralize it. And Aaron Judge just blows away the rest of the field. I mean, Ken Griffey Jr. on the surface might have had some seasons that were comparable, but he's playing the height of his career in the steroid era. So, and Aaron Judge is putting up his best seasons in which the league batting average is at all-time lows. People are striking out more. Like, pitchers are throwing harder than ever. I mean, I know we've said this before, but if you're going to do cross-era comparisons, like, Judge just completely takes the cake with that. So it's important to remember that, because Judge is objectively one of the best hitters of all time. But when you look at the era, I mean, it just becomes not even a question. And I think that makes you appreciate him a whole lot more.
Ken Griffey Jr.'s highest WRC plus in a single season was 164. Aaron Judge's career WRC plus is 171. On top of that, it's just so ridiculous how good he is. On top of that, Ken Griffey Jr.'s career OPS is 907. Aaron Judge's is 1003. The highest Griffey Jr. ever got to in a single season was 1.076. Aaron Judge is working on his second season higher than that. And of course is doing it in a meaningfully different offensive environment. Judge is a career 400 on base guy. Griffey had 2 400 on base seasons. Like, they're just not comparable. And I understand there's this aversion to putting Aaron Judge in the tier he really belongs in, either because he's only been around for like 8 years or because people don't like how much he swings and misses or whatever. But the bottom line is, this guy for the last 3 seasons has been a 300, 430, 670 hitter. And those hitters don't exist. Like, he's the only one. And to act like he is anything other than generational is silly.
It's just I just never can get past what he used to be in 20 his prospect days and in 2016, and like, to see what he's become is just crazy. Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like I've watched a lot of baseball at this point, and like, I can process a lot of things, but like, that I still have trouble processing from when I remember like the prospect evaluations and when he first came up. And I mean, even 2017 was an incredible season, but if, that falls in more of the, like, I mean, I shouldn't even say that because it was a 284, 422, 627 season, but he struck out 208 times. And yeah, like, I think if he was that, he'd be Hall of Fame for his career. But like, he eliminated the weaknesses in his game. He strikes out far less than he did at that point. And then he brought every single rate stat up another level and improved upon the power that got him 52 home runs. Like, it's just hard to even fathom.
Yeah, it's among the greatest player dev stories of all time, if not the greatest. Like, that obviously you have like your Mike Piazzas who were drafted in the millionth round and go on to the Hall of Fame. And Judge was, of course, a first round pick. He was a top 100 prospect. So we have to adjust for that. But if you just look at the development at the major league level and how he basically flipped a switch between being completely overmatched in 2016 to just dominating in 2017 and every year since, it really is unreal. And the fact that, like, I've been saying this on Twitter in the last week, and I think in the interest of like enjoying what's in front of us, I think people ought to remember it. I used to like almost get sad when my grandpa would talk about watching peak Mickey Mantle, because I was like, man, like, I don't think I'm ever going to see a player like that. Like, what an incredible thing that he got to experience that I'm just not going to get to. And then Aaron Judge, when I turned like 25, just turned into peak Mickey Mantle. And that's pretty sick.
That's, I mean, it's just hard to even and process that like statement, but yeah, you're right.
It's unbelievable. And I guess my message is just like, make sure you're appreciating what you're seeing. This kind of thing doesn't come around. And I think the way that Mike Trout's career has gone with injuries and the fact that we're now talking about, like, is he going to be worth 10 more WAR in his entire career? After he put up back-to-back 10 WAR seasons in 2012 and 2013, like, it's a reminder that this stuff doesn't last forever. Even if Aaron Judge is healthy for the rest of his career, he is not going to be this guy for the rest of his career. And what we're seeing, while maybe it's not necessarily true to call it unprecedented, is not something we can remember from a clean player in our lifetimes.
Yeah.
And it's important that we enjoy that. And I think that's part of my visceral reaction against the like doomer fans is, look, I really want Aaron Judge to win a World Series. I really want the Yankees to win the World Series. I want that every year. But that I should be angry and sad and consider everything a failure if they don't, when I am watching one of the greatest peaks of all time playing on my favorite team every night, like, I just don't know that I can get down with that. So please remember to enjoy Aaron Judge and how special what you're seeing from him is.
Yeah. I mean, there's going to be a day on this podcast where we're like, should the Yankees play Aaron Judge less? Should they bench him?
Yep.
Is this the end? And like,
yeah, people wanted us to do that in April.
Right. But like true. But like, I remember when that happened with A-Rod, and I mean, it was never going to happen with Jeter, but if it was anyone other than Derek Jeter, would have happened with Jeter. Like it had Mark Teixeira. I mean, time comes for everyone and it will happen. So, I think you're right. And we should appreciate it now and not worry about the historical comparisons, because there's going to be decline years. Like, these stats are in all likelihood going to be worse than they look now in terms of his career rate averages, but these seasons are not going to be gone. The accumulation is not going to disappear. And like, I feel, I'm glad that we can enjoy that and like have that, and like that will not go away. And if I have to sit back in 10 years and listen to these episodes, like, I want to enjoy those episodes. I don't want to be like, wow, if only you had, talked about him more instead of, his comparison to others. So
yeah, I mean, 2003 to 2009, which was Albert Pujols' first 180 WRC plus season to his last. Gosh, he was unreal. 174 WRC plus, 57.9 Fangraphs WAR in 7 total seasons. But then we also saw 2016 to 2022 when he was a 97 WRC plus hitter in 3,100 plate appearances and was worth 0.4 Fangraphs WAR total. And if you only look at 2016 to 2021, before he like resurrected himself in St. Louis the last year, it was 90 WRC plus and negative 1.6 WAR. So as you said, there will be decline years. And failing to appreciate Aaron Judge in this time while he's peaking would be one of the great mistakes you can make as a baseball fan, because this is something extremely special. This is something to be appreciated. I think even when Bonds was doing the Bonds thing, there was just such a steroid cloud over baseball, and one rolled in so quickly after that I think it was hard for people to enjoy what they were seeing. Obviously, it wasn't as easy for just the average person to contextualize these stats. We're in a very unique place with Aaron Judge, and having the presumptive MVP on your team is terrific. And yeah, please enjoy it. That's what I have to say.
Agreed.
Whipple, the Yankees are pretty widely projected to be the best team in baseball. Pacoda has them winning the most games, winning the division, and gives them the highest World Series odds. The Fangraphs playoff odds have them winning the division. They have them with the highest win total. They have them with the second highest World Series odds after the Dodgers. As you know, I like the projections. I don't really know what to make of them at this time. I think there are a number of very good teams in Major League Baseball. I think the Yankees, Orioles, Guardians, Dodgers, and Phillies are all quite good. If I asked you today, so actually, I'm going to ask this question, but I'm going to preface it with this. We know that being the best team in baseball doesn't do much for your chances of winning the World Series. It feels to me like any team from kind of the top tier of teams, however you define that, is probably just about equally likely to win the World Series. Like the Yankees, Phillies, and Dodgers all have very similar World Series odds. So I'm going to ask you who's in your top tier of teams and where the Yankees fit in that tier. But I'm also going to say whether the Yankees are first or third or fifth or however many teams you have in that tier, it probably doesn't have much bearing on how likely they are to win the World Series. But I'm interested in how you see things as they've played out so far.
I mean, I feel like I agree with your assessment of those like upper echelon of teams. I don't really know if the AL West is a race to the top as much as a race to the bottom right now. And like, as much as people always have the Astros chip on their shoulder, they're not playing very good baseball right now. So as it stands, like I'm going to not use, the years of watching them in the ALCS to make a stupid observation. And I think in the NL, I mean, the Brewers are also not really playing that well right now. And I feel like the NL Central is just kind of a mess. And I don't know. Like right now, I feel like I wouldn't put any stock into like teams out of that division in my upper tier, but obviously, like you said, doesn't really have any bearing on who wins the World Series. I feel like the group that you said, and then I mean the Twins and the Royals and the Braves are kind of like hovering below it, but in terms of like how I would rank the Yankees within that upper group, I mean, I still as poorly as the Phillies have played, like I still feel like they are the all around best team in baseball this year. I mean, they're playing poorly, but like we're not like as you said, the Yankees play poorly, the Orioles, like everyone is gonna have a bad stretch. If I was starting the playoffs today, I feel like the Phillies would be the team that I would pick as like my World Series favorite going into the playoffs. Also, the fact that I think
they just have such good pitching.
They have such good pitching. I know it's like hard to say that after what happened, but they have
No,
a
they
really
do.
deep lineup
Yeah.
and such good pitching. And I think the NL is just going to be easier to come out of. I mean, after that, like I feel like for me, it's the Yankees and the Orioles battling for number 2. And at this moment in time, I'd give it to, and this is objective. Like I think the Yankees, like I think the Orioles at the trade deadline did not do what they needed to do because they had a bigger opportunity than the Yankees, and I think they kind of played around the edges. And I like Zach Eflin, but I think if you're an Orioles fan, getting him and Trevor Rogers has to feel a little bit disappointing, knowing who you have and who you could have given up for. And I feel like the Yankees are moving in like I just feel like they have a higher peak than the Orioles. I know that sounds crazy to say, but I just think with Judge and Soto, like I know Gunnar Henderson is good. I just think Judge and Soto makes your peak that much higher. And the last head-to-head series we saw, that was reinforced for me. So I'd say really it is a toss-up between the AL East leaders. I'll give it to the Yankees by like a hair, but I think the Orioles are 2B in that case. And then I would probably say the Dodgers at 3 and the Guardians at 4, or 4 and 5. And I think there's a big gap between the rest of the league. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd probably put the Royals at 6, but like the Guardians are definitely better than we've seen them. I just think the Dodgers are always going to be up there in terms of like my respect for them. And again, coming out of the easier league. So I know it's kind of long winded, but that's in my mental standings. That's what it looks like.
Yeah. I mean, highest WRC plus, best run differential, most wins. I certainly believe the Phillies are the best team in the National League. I don't really trust the Dodgers pitching enough, and I don't think their hitting is better than that of the Phillies by enough to make up for it. I'm not sure the Yankees aren't the best team in baseball. I'll say that. I have my reservations, as you know, about their starting pitching, but I'm not sure they're not the best team in baseball. I will put that out there. And with that, we're going to go to some mailbag questions that we got from our listeners and followers. And we've got a special guest this time, so we will throw it there. And we are back. We got some questions from Yankees Files listeners and followers. And in this case, they were simply too hard for us and they required a special guest. We brought in Alex, whose Twitter handle is at DevA72727, generated by Twitter, not by Alex. We just got that cleared up. So no criticism there. Alex, welcome to the show. It's great to have you. I specifically enjoy, as I told you in DMs a few weeks ago, I think you're the only person on Twitter who I've ever seen analyze how a player's advanced stats would be different if he performed differently. For example, here's what his WRC plus would be and here's what his WAR would be. I think those are really interesting. So I want to commend you for those and thank you for your contributions to baseball Twitter, your support for Dick Allen. Happy for you to introduce yourself further if you feel like it.
I mean, thanks for having me. I mean, I'm Alex. I'm changing my username soon, I promise. I Yankees fan, lifelong. Baseball fan, lifelong. Dick Allen fan since about 2018.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not J.A. Happ. You are not J.A. Happ. I mean,
I am not J.A. Happ. If you check, my profile picture has had me being bald for about half a decade now. I'm not bald. I have hair. I promise.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. That's basically all about me. I tweet random baseball stats that I find funny maybe once every 2 days.
They're very good.
Yeah.
They're very good. If any of our followers, and I know some of you are not following Alex, you should be. Like some of the most interesting, thought-provoking statistical baseball content that we've come across. And in our latest plea for mailbag questions, Losses Above Replacement at LAR_baseball, another phenomenal Twitter account, asked us the following, and Alex was the perfect person to bring in to consult on this question. So the question is, if you had a player who was guaranteed to hit a home run in every plate appearance, but MLB imposed a limit on the number of times he could hit, how many plate appearances would the limit have to be to make the player not worth rostering? And how many would he need to win an MVP? So Alex, I know you've run some numbers. I am very, very interested to hear what you found.
Okay. So just to get off the bat, someone who hits a home run every plate appearance is a WRC plus of about 1,300.
Is that any good?
That is, Aaron Judge's is 200. So imagine someone who is 6 times better than the field than Aaron Judge is.
Oh gosh.
Which would be a monster. But for context, MJ Melendez yesterday had a WRC plus of 1,290.
Holy cow.
He had one plate appearance. But yeah, so that one home run is worth about 1.4 batting runs, which is about 1/7 of a win. So 7 home runs is 1 WAR. So, in my opinion, if you want to get to about an 8 WAR guy, then 56 straight home runs gets you to right around 8 WAR. It gets you to the second highest OFF of the past 20 years, only behind 2022 Aaron Judge. Like, those 56 plate appearances, in my opinion, would give him MVP.
Wow. That's really so just let's be transparent about the assumptions here. There's obviously no base running involved.
Yeah.
Are we assuming that this guy's an average defender? Are we assuming that he's a DH? How does that play into this?
He plays so little that even if he is a DH, his WAR drops by like very little.
Okay. That's fair.
Like,
yeah, I guess he only has 56 plate appearances.
Yeah. So
56 plate appearances gets him the MVP. What makes him rosterable? 20?
I have a very fun take about this. If the limit was 1 plate appearance, I would roster him.
Elaborate.
So I was looking at Jahmai Jones's game logs from this season. And through the first 73 games of the Yankee season, he was rostered for all of them, and he had 19 plate appearances.
That's a really good point.
Like, if you need... This guy could be so valuable if you make the playoffs, and you just need that one home run, that one Greg Bird moment to just send you over the edge.
Wow. That might actually... You might be right about that. Whipple, what do you think?
I mean, like when the home run, like,
well, he's only going to hit a home run. Yeah.
And if the play appearance was 1, you just have that like bullet in the chamber, but you have to keep him on the roster all season.
And I guess they can't, the assumption is, I guess, like, and the other team doesn't, so they can't intentionally walk him. Like, he's going to get a pitch to hit.
I mean, I guess the Jahmai Jones example is actually pretty good because I feel like that's so beyond the norms of what I would have thought was rosterable. And we did see it happen. I don't know if you could like stomach no regular season contribution. Like,
but I guess teams roster below replacement level guys for entire seasons all the time.
Right.
Like Andrew Benintendi is going to be below replacement level for his entire contract.
And your guy is not below replacement level.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to think about.
It would be... Yankees fans would complain so much to Cashman that he probably wouldn't make it the full season, but I think he should.
I also feel like that would like spark like a World War III of MVP voting.
Yeah, this guy had 56 plate appearances. How could he be the most valuable?
Right. Like, why doesn't he play more? Like, why,
imagine the 5,000 OPS. Sorry.
Right. Imagine players who have like 56 plate appearances plus like 400 sub replacement plate appearances. They're getting out there for their team, like, I mean, that's like the whole, Hall of Fame compiler debate. Like, would you rather have the guy who's really good for the reliever, or would you rather have the guy who just eats up innings? I mean, a lot of guys are going to say eats up innings, even if they're below.
Time to put Jordan Lyles in the Hall of Fame.
The Chad innings eater.
Okay, so Alex, thank you for that analysis. Yeah. I think that's awesome. Yeah, the fact that it's like breaking my brain that this guy in 60 plate appearances would be like a shoe-in for MVP, but I feel like it's also just true. Yeah. Which is insane.
I mean, wait, one more. Would it be like 56 like pinch hit appearances, or you just get him all out of the way and then he's benched?
I was picturing it as pinch hit, so you could maximize win probability. And if you play your cards right, this guy gets like 150 RBIs, and the casuals love him.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Pinch hit does seem to be the best way to do it. And then what that brings into play, and I don't blame you for not building this into the model, is like, what does that mean for the other roster spots? And like, if the 25th guy on the roster is terrible, and then this guy pinch hitting for someone else means that guy has to play, what's the impact? But like, still, if we're talking about an 8-WAR player, like, you don't have a negative 8-WAR player as your 25th guy. So
I have a follow-up. If it was pinch hits, how many pinch hit plate appearances could he homer in before the other team starts like intentionally walking him? Like, at what level is it like now news that like this guy's only homering when he pinch hits?
It's gotta be soon. Like, I feel like after the 4th, someone has to catch on to just,
5,
this guy's too good. Yeah.
5 is what I had in mind. But I think the question breaks down unless you assume that like the other team doesn't know that he's just gonna homer.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if they could never know, because I feel like
Yeah.
you could like, if you want, you could start him and then pinch hit or try to like keep the other team off balance. That would be crazy though. Like this guy is just pinch hitting and then every team just starts intentionally walking.
Oh wait, that's crazy. Is if you put him in the lineup, never intending to actually hit him, just to like deke the other team into like switching pitchers or something. Okay, there are a lot of levels to this. We got to get to other questions. So switching gears massively. My best man, Gary Shore, who Whipple met at the wedding.
Gary, we love Gary.
And I understand the two of you discussed the prevalence of animal questions in the Yankees Files mailbag. This is not an animal question. In fact, it was introduced with, I had to give Whipple a break from the animal questions. The question is, so Gary says, I've been leading the charge on other sport overtime for a while now with little success, and I want to hear a professional podcaster's take. If Major League Baseball ditched extra innings and instead made the teams play a different sport to determine the winner in overtime, what sport should it be, and how would the Yankees fare?
Wait, so how would, I mean, I know it's a question, but would they like...
So it's extra innings. Yeah. They'd wheel in a court or a rink, or they'd, paint the football lines on the field, and, or they'd go to a bowling alley. The Dodgers should pick bowling because Mookie Betts is an elite bowler.
One more theoretical question. Is this for fan enjoyment, or is this just like, what is the best approximation of success, do you guys think?
So how would the Yankees fare is secondary. So ostensibly, let's see. If MLB ditched extra innings and instead made the teams play a different sport to determine the winner in overtime, what sport should it be is the question. So I guess you can interpret that however you want.
All right.
Do you have a thought, Whipple?
I mean, I feel like a team sport would be hard. Like I would kind of want to see something like golf, like honestly, like, or tennis, where you could like send up a guy or two. I just feel like telling the Yankees and like the Mets to be like, okay, get on a basketball court. Like, I want to be like, okay, like, it's something that you reasonably could do as a baseball player, not baseball, but like, we know, a lot of guys will golf. So pick your like, group, do like, I don't know, like pick if like one or two guys and then do like a few holes of golf. I know that's like not reasonable, but for me, like I would want to avoid.
I mean, it's not a reasonable question.
Right. I would want. My big thing was like I want to avoid something that's just like a joke. Like I don't want to see the Yankees playing like touch football. Like it just, I mean, that would be like silly. Like for something that like actually could lead, or like you're saying with Mookie and bowling, like where it's like, okay, there's some level of skill to determine this.
Think of what the golf extra innings would do for Aaron Hicks's value as a player.
Right. Exactly.
I think. In the interest of the Yankees just being really good at it, I think you have to go football and you just throw fades to Aaron Judge, or basketball and you bring back Andrew Brackman, who I think tried to have a professional career in basketball in Australia. I want it to be football. That is what I've decided. Alex, what do you think?
How much do you guys know about Highlight?
I know it's the fastest sport in the world.
Correct. So
it's extremely corrupt, I believe.
I also believe that is the case. But the fastest sport in the world, everyone has a glove where you can hold the ball on the hook and you throw it as hard as you can. Aroldis Chapman would be awesome at that. And Aaron Hicks would be awesome at that.
Wow. Okay, so Highlight. I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
The injuries, the ball is made in such a way that the injuries aren't that bad. You just get a really bad bruise if you get hit with the ball. Like, we'll be fine. It'd be cool. It'd be fun to introduce Highlight to the American audience, the Japanese audience.
You don't have to protect people from injuries. It's sports. Yeah. Like, people are going to get injured.
Yeah. Some further questions from Zan Rosen at Zan Rosen. What's the playoff bullpen look like? Whipple?
I mean, we're starting to see some of it. Like, I think Mark Leiter is like going to be a guy, and I think Clay Holmes is going to be the closer, no matter how much
Certainly
people want to
should be.
complain. But I think Mark Leiter, we're starting to see him push Luke Weaver into an earlier role for potentially multiple innings or outs, and I think like a Tommy Kahnle kind of fits in the middle of that. I mean, if those are your four guys, and then Tim Hill is the lefty, and you fill it out with some other guys. I mean, I would like to see Scott Efros at least have a chance at that bullpen. We're still a long way away, but like I feel like we're starting to see that back end tape shape. And I'm liking what I'm seeing so far. Definitely Mark Leiter will be a big part of it. I think that's really a great addition.
Alex?
I think the bigger question is who gets kicked out of the rotation.
Right.
Because if it's one of the lefties, then that changes the entire format. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, we have one healthy lefty reliever, and it's Tim Hill. Yeah, so...
But they have a lot of guys who are really good against lefties. Tommy Kahnle's terrific against lefties. Scott Efros, if he ever comes back, is terrific against lefties. They don't have a platoon problem necessarily in the bullpen.
Yes, agreed. But long story short, I would want Stroman as a long reliever. It's not going to happen, I don't think. I think that he's too high value of a contract for them not to keep him in the rotation. And then the bullpen is, what we were just saying, Holmes as the closer, Weaver, Leiter, Kahnle, Hill, Michael Tonkin.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about Tonkin.
I think the two most vulnerable jobs are Hill and Cousins. Because the Yankees have Jake Cousins at home. His name is Nick Birdie. I feel like those guys could push each other. I probably prefer Cousins. Sorry to the Nick Birdie fan account that we always interact with, but like Cousins doesn't walk everyone he sees. But if you assume that you're getting Efros and Hamilton back, and obviously those aren't safe assumptions. Efros is healthy but not pitching well. Hamilton isn't healthy yet. Like, I don't see how you take Tonkin out of the rotation now. You just traded for De Los Santos, and then Holmes, Weaver, Kahnle, Leiter are obviously all safe. Like, there aren't a lot of jobs to go around. So hot seat Cousins and Hill if it gets to that point. Alex, to your point, another question we got from Nick at NickJK070. How soon will I be relinquished from the burden that is having to watch Marcus Stroman every 5 days? Unfortunately, I think the answer is you won't be. Marcus Stroman is a ground ball guy who doesn't get ground balls, and that doesn't really work. And I don't think he's going anywhere.
I mean, I think the quick, more interesting question, kind of combining all these, is like, what's the playoff rotation look like? And if you assume Cole and Rodon are probably locks, and Luis, I mean, I know people are still saying Luis Gil could close or be a late inning reliever, but I feel like they're really pushing for him to be in the playoff rotation. I mean, that's three guys. So who gets that last start? Who's in the bullpen between Schmidt, Cortez, Stroman? I feel like Clark Schmidt is destined to be a playoff bullpen pitcher. And I feel like...
I mean, if Clark Schmidt comes back and is beginning of the year Clark Schmidt, he has to be a starter.
Yeah, I just feel like, I don't know. Like, it's been a long time for him to build up. And, like, Stroman is kind of a non-factor. Like, for me, it's between Nestor and Clark. And maybe you're right. I just feel like they want Nestor to be a playoff starter.
Maybe. I don't know. Alex, do you have a point of view on this?
In 2022, so I don't know. Yeah,
I think that Clark Schmidt is a better starting pitcher than Nestor Cortez, but I also unfortunately think that Nestor is going to win the spot solely because more experienced, more healthy, would probably function worse in a bullpen if we're being real.
Yep.
Clark Schmidt just has the perfect Michael King 2022 go 2 innings of dominance and then get hurt makeup.
That's fair. From Rob Sasso at Sasso CT, pulled fly ball merchant son or home run per fly ball rate overperforming pitcher daughter? Obviously, pulled fly ball merchant son. Yeah. Right? Like, there's no argument. You don't want lucky pitcher daughter. That's ridiculous.
Right. Sure.
Like, that's not a... Pulled fly balls is what's making Nolan Arenado win so many Silver Sluggers. Like, that's his whole game. That was Didi's whole game. Come on.
Yeah, it's the only good thing.
Yeah.
From Waleed Harani at Waleed_Harani. I know you're pretty big fans of Glaber. Does the defense worry you in the postseason when every out means a little more? Do you think they do a defensive sub in the playoffs? No, because there's not another, like, it's not like there's an obvious, oh, you put this guy at second base in the playoffs. Like, okay, so here's the thing. DJ is the defensive sub for Ben Rice. Jazz could, I guess, in theory, be the defensive sub for Glaber, but then you're putting Cabrera, who's not a good defensive third baseman, at third base. Like, there's no way to make it make sense unless it involves John Birdie in some way. I'm not even sure that works out. And also, like, Glaber is not as bad a defensive second baseman as people make him out to be. Like, this isn't we need a Danny Echeverria because Miguel Andujar is generationally bad at playing his position situation. So yeah, I think the Glaber defense stuff is overblown. The infield defense stuff generally is overblown, and I'm not worried about Glaber in the playoffs, or at least I don't think the Yankees are going to be substituting him in the playoffs, and they'll live with whatever they get from him. Alex?
I think I fully agree. Like, Glaber is a below-average defensive middle infielder, and that, using the Dave Dombrowski method, is very bad for winning playoff games. But he's no, like, Keston Hiura. He can field. He came up as a shortstop. He knows what he's doing. Yeah. Generally.
Whipple, do you have a perspective on this?
I mean, yeah, no, I agree. Like, I can't say that I'm not worried. I think outs mean the same in all games, and I feel like my opinions will not change, but I also feel like they're focusing their defensive resources in the right place. And like you said, it's like shuffling, deck chairs, like on the Titanic. It's not going to lead to a better outcome. If it's going to, it's going to be good or it's going to be bad. Like, it's not going to be because you move the pieces in the right place. That's what I think.
From Correa to NYY, that's Ben. Could we bat Judge 1 and Soto 2? We don't have a leadoff hitter right now. Judge played his best baseball back in 22 as a leadoff center fielder. It might reduce his intentional walks and would give him more at bats. Fewer runs batted in, batting behind Soto is a trade-off. Or fewer runs batted in than batting behind Soto is a trade-off I'm willing to make. Judge and Soto should be hitting 1 and 2, but Soto should be hitting first. I think that's the real answer. The leadoff hitter is on the team. His name's Juan Soto. If not, Ben Rice, Austin Wells, Gleyber Torres, I'm looking at all of you. But no, you don't need to put Judge there to solve it. You just put Soto there.
Yeah, I mean,
like, Judge is playing better than he did in 2022, hitting after Juan Soto. So just keep doing it.
There's some Tango Tiger tweet about this, about how the player batting in front of you affects the pitches you see more than the player batting behind you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so sure that is heavily helping both Juan Soto and Aaron Judge. It would help Juan Soto more if Austin Wells was batting in front of him and not Alex Verdugo.
Yep.
But no, Judge should not bat in front of Soto. Batting your guy who's on pace to hit 64 home runs first is a recipe for failure.
Yeah, why can't Anthony Volpe just hit well at leadoff? So frustrating.
I said this on the last episode. I don't think Volpe and Jazz are the answers because they don't let the leadoff guy run. So if you want stolen bases to be part of the game, it can't be Volpe, it can't be Jazz. It needs to be someone who's going to get on base. And to me, if Wells is entrenched in the fourth spot and you're not willing to hit Soto first, you just bat Rice there against righties and Glaber there against lefties. I don't see what else makes sense. Final question from Joey Thompson at JSTNOV3. Who are your first team all spoonerism picks for the league? And obviously there are people that we're going to leave out because I'm springing this question on everyone. My go-to recently has been Him Till. Tim Hill, he's right there. And what people are like, oh, what do the Yankees do against lefties? Well, look, I think it's going to be him till they find another option. Whipple, do you have a spoonerism you're a fan of, or Alex?
It's a tough
Let me
question.
check the roster.
Yeah,
because this is a loaded question. I don't want to get it wrong.
Lim Tinsicum is always a good one. I've been saying Grant Trisham a lot on Twitter. I think that one works nicely. I don't know why I've been saying that, but I have. Yeah, those are Ren Bice not great.
I was like Carrot Goal.
Carrot Goal is a
Yeah.
good one. Yeah.
Carrot Goal is good. I did D.D. Javis for a bit.
Oh, that's good. But the other thing is, he is Jonathan Davis, and I don't know if we want to distract from that. Freddie Freeman, great one.
Of course. Yeah, you can't go wrong. Jemai Jones, I mean.
Jemai Jones, Taylor Trammell.
Jemai Jones. Or I guess that would just sound the same.
Yeah,
I was trying to do too much there.
Yeah, hey, Colton Cowser, that's one that
Colton Cowser's a classic.
All right, this has gotten out of control.
This is
Alex, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Yankees Files podcast. We really appreciate your insight into all of our mailbag questions. Anything you want to plug, any causes you want to promote, any places you want to direct people to on your way out?
I mean, they have my Twitter. That's easy. DM me. I'll give you my LinkedIn. I need more connections.
Hell yeah.
About 500.
Of course. On the road. Let's see. Shout out Jorbit Vivas, best prospect in the Yankee system.
Vorbit Jivas.
Yeah, Vorbit Jivas. Let's see. I'm just gonna shout out Tink Hence and make my farewell. I love Tink Hence.
All right. And with that, we'll bid you farewell, Alex, and looking forward to having you on again sometime soon.
All right, thanks for having me. See you guys.
Appreciate it. See ya. And we are back. Thanks again to Alex for offering some insights and joining us on our mailbag questions. Whipple, it's time to start getting this episode wrapped up. And as you know, confidence is where that begins. So 1 to 10 as the Yankees go into this week, in which they may wrap it up by facing Andrew Heaney, but first have the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. 1 to 10, your confidence in the team.
I'm going to say 8.5 because I still feel like this week showed there's like a lot of issues with the pitching, and some of them have been worked out. Some of them are still in progress. I still feel like there is more to show from this team, and especially like in the coming weeks, you have a good schedule. They need to bank the wins. But it's hard for me to completely forget, even if they do well, like what the last few weeks look like and what the questions are around a lot of different spots in this team. So I want them to keep answering those questions the way they have been. And I think my confidence will continue to grow. But the fact is, there's 50 games left and they're in a dogfight for first place. And, like that, it's a good position to be in, but it definitely isn't the most comfortable position. I think they've stabilized. I think they're going to continue to play well, but I would be lying if I said I was confident one way or the other in which way this division race will go. And I know that it's the Yankees. Like, we're Yankees fans. We want the Yankees to do well. I certainly would like the Yankees to beat the Orioles, but this is definitely one of the closest in terms of caliber of team head-to-head battles at a division I can remember. And I'm reserving room at the top for the Yankees to rise to the challenge. And I hope that, by September 20th or whenever the Orioles come back to Yankee Stadium, the Yankees are in a good position to finish the division race or, at least give themselves a shot at that. But they might not be. Like, it is going to be tough. So they're in a good spot, but there's more that I'd like to see to really hold their spot in this tough race.
I'm going to a 9 because Carlos Rodon since June 27th has struck out 12.9 guys per 9 with a 4-to-1 strikeout to walk ratio. He's allowed too many homers in that time, but his xFIP is only 3.47. So I don't think he's going to keep allowing so many homers. I confident that he is a true number 2 in this rotation. And if he is, I think that changes the complexion of this team entirely. It reduces the reliance on Luis Gil, which I think is valuable. It reduces the reliance on Nestor Cortez. By playoff time, it hopefully makes Marcus Stroman, a guy who doesn't even have a roster spot. It would just be so valuable for this team. And I think we've seen exactly what we want to see from him. And the actual run prevention results will come through. So I'm going up to a 9. I can't be pessimistic in any degree about the team with the best run differential in the game, highest WRC plus, with the signs I'm seeing from the pitchers that I care about. Look, that wraps it up for this episode. The Yankees will complete the homestand with their 3 games against the Angels and 3 games against the Rangers before going on the road to Chicago to start next week. Whipple, before we totally wrap things up, do you have any parting shots?
Yeah, I'm going to do my annual, just kidding. I've done some show and tell a few times. So we haven't recorded a podcast since I got the Garrett Cole bobblehead. So I just wanted to do that in honor of a good start yesterday, which people were ready to kick him out of the rotation after he gave up 2 runs. But he's Garrett Cole. He's really good and all. And he did what aces do. You know, he's got some full body fatigue. And I mean, listen, we've all had full body.
Do you think he was a little mid-spring beat up?
I was going to say also shout out to Aaron Boone for continuing to say a beat up. Verdugo's midsummer beat up. Yep. I loved mid-spring beat up at the time. Garrett Cole is midsummer beat up. When Garrett Cole's midsummer beat up, he's going to throw 5 2/3 innings and only allow 2 runs against the Blue Jays. Hopefully when Alex Verdugo's midsummer beat up, he
never plays baseball again
in a body bag. Just kidding. He's going to be on the bench. But, yeah, to show everyone. Listen, nobody wanted this as much as me. And I was desperate in line. I was worried I wasn't going to get it. And you know what? Good things happen to true believers of Garrett Cole's 2023 Cy Young season. So I'll leave it at that.
Hell yeah. Well, I'm glad you got it. Whipple, that does it for this episode of the Yankees Files podcast. Thanks to everyone for listening. If you enjoyed, we hope you will download the podcast, rate, review, subscribe, listen to it a million times, do all that stuff. If you did enjoy it, we hope you'll just do the stuff that boosts our numbers. You can keep up with everything we do at yankeesfiles.com. You can follow us on Twitter where we're at Yankees Files. Podcast is available wherever you get your podcasts, including with the added bonus of video on Spotify. Full video episodes are also available on youtube.com/@crosstownsports, where you can also get the Battle of New York featuring Joey, Caroline, Matt, and Rich and company. That does it for this episode of Yankees Files. We'll be back next week, similar time, similar place, to recap the series with the Angels and Rangers. Until next time, let's go Yankees.